And to do that, I'm going to introduce our moderator for the evening. Our moderator for the evening is Marion Winik, a University of Baltimore professor. Marion is the author of The Big Book of the Dead and winner of the 2000 Towson Prize for Literature. Among her 10 other books, that's 10, that's 2 digits, 10 other books are First Comes Love and Above Us Only Sky. Her award-winning Bohemian Rhapsody column appears monthly at Baltimore Fishbowl, and her essays have been published in New York Times Magazine, The Sun, and many, many other places. A board member of the National Book Critics Circle, she writes book reviews for People, Newsday, The Washington Post, Kirkus Reviews. She hosts the weekly Reader podcast at WYPR, and she was a commentator on NPR for 15 years. Her honors include an NEA fellowship. No, it's the last one. Her honors include an NEA fellowship in creative nonfiction. That was the last one. Okay. NEA fellowship. We got to get to that one. Oh, Marion, it's all handed to you now. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness. Well, that was certainly more than you needed to know about me for my job tonight, which is to introduce these 2 wonderful poets and to ask them some questions to get the questioning started later. But speaking of getting the questioning started, I welcome you throughout the evening to put questions in the chat as they occur to you. And you know, I'll look through them later when the Q&A time comes and see what I can find. You can also post later when the Q&A starts, but I'm just inviting you to post the questions as they come into your head. So our first reader is Liz Hazen, and I am truly delighted to introduce her. Elizabeth Hazen is the author of Chaos Theories and Girls Like Us. Her poetry will make you notice words much more than you usually do. It's as if she put the words through the car wash before she uses them. All the layers of old crap come off and they're new again, sparkly and clean. Intimacy, immediacy, ventricle, chokeberry. She's known for dealing with the metaphoric import of scientific ideas, as well as with the experience of being female in a culture of misogyny. As the great Elizabeth Spires said of her new book, Girls Like Us, wrenching in its declarations and revelations, this is a book for this particular moment. Hazen is a poet of admirable courage, unflinching honesty, and deep accomplishment. Liz is a graduate of Yale and the Hopkins Writing Seminars. She teaches at Calvert School. Her poems have appeared in Best American Poetry, American Literary Review, and many other places. She's also one of my best friends, and I will say that as much as she excels at poetry, she excels at friendship even more. She joins us tonight from her home in Baltimore. Take it away, Liz.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Thank you to the Writers Center and Zach. I actually cut my teeth at the Writers Center, and that's where I met Rose a lot of years ago, I think 25 plus at this point. So it's really a delight to be reading. I wish we were at the actual Writers Center, but it's really a privilege to be reading at this event. And thanks to Rose and Jimmy, the best publishers in the world, and to Kate for letting me crash your book launch with my book actually came out a year ago, and it was, I think, the last time I was in public at a social event. So here we go. Yes, I was 15, 10 years ago, actually. I'm going to start with the first poem in Girls Like Us. It's called Devices, and I'm a middle school English teacher. I'm actually going to step away from teaching at the end of this year, but you will tell from this poem that I have spent many years in the classroom. This is called Devices. Rhyme relies on repetition. Pink drink, big wig, tramp stamp, rank skank. Alliteration too. Peter Piper's pickled peppers, silly Sally's sheep. Silly trumping smart because the L's create consonants. Assonance repeats vowel sounds. Hot bod, dumb slut, frigid bitch. Even his line, girl, we'll have a fine time, or her refusals, no, don't. In metaphor, we compare two things. Suppose a man calls a woman fox. We understand this is not literal. Same goes for pig, dog, chick. Same goes for octopus, as in his hands were all over me. Metonymy relies on association. Suits, skirts, that joke about the dishwasher, if it stops working, slap the bitch. Synecdoche reduces a thing to a single part. He wants pussy, by which we must infer he wants a woman. We've been called so many things that we are not. We startle at the sound of our own names. As I was trying to figure out what to read, and it's been a while since I love giving readings, and it's been a while since I've had the opportunity to do so. And I mean, so many of my poems are about visibility and invisibility, a lot of hiding in them. And so I sort of went through, and I guess thematically, I was choosing poems that I feel like speak to that. It's been on my mind a lot. I just saw that amazing movie about the young woman, Promising Young Woman. That's been on my mind. So there's mostly from the new book, and then I'll tell you there's a couple from Chaos Theories. But this one is from way back when I used to work as an artist model in college. And I think Rose actually did the same thing. And I remember when I started doing it, I would often think of Rose being in a similar situation. So this is called Tips from a Nude Model. If you sit still long enough, your ass can fall asleep. The numbing will be gradual as curtains fade in light. Try not to worry if you lose sensation. No one can hurry the clock's progress. If your body wakes to pins, you must ignore the pain. It's only skin deep after all, till he completes his sketch, and then you may unfold yourself and stretch. When you resume the pose, arms arced in place above your head to create negative space, select a focal point and fix your gaze. It is useful to remember no one stays statue still. Don't forget to breathe. Don't let him touch you. When the session ends, collect your pay. Insist on cash. Get dressed. Don't smile. Know that your body may be numb a while. And when you see yourself revealed in paint, note the proportions, but ignore the faint glimmer he put in your eye that isn't you. Embrace who you are, the nothing that you do. This actually comes right after that one in the book. This is called Hide and Seek. In childhood, you believed everything was waiting to be found. Think of the rocks your father led you to, the fossils inside, the basement boxes spilling secrets, love letters, photographs, cracked china dolls, handkerchiefs stitched with strange initials. Think of the stillness of your hiding place, your body stretched so flat beneath the sheet, a wrinkle alone betrayed you. You dwindled. Protruding bones became a shroud. No one could see beyond your hunger. Even now, your low-cut dress, electric blue and shining, reveals nothing of consequence. You spend whole seasons hiding, emerging just to check the mail, but your ear is always cocked for Ali Ali oxen free. Let's see how I'm doing. Okay, this one is, again, I mean, I feel like it's similarly sort of about trying to figure out, I don't know, the speaker's trying to figure out who she is and where she belongs, which maybe we're all always trying to do. And sort of about a road trip from way, way back. I think I was about 8 years old and we drove cross country. This is called Death Valley. My father grips the wheel. My mother reads a map in darkness. We are somewhere between Flagstaff and Antelope Canyon. I am somewhere between my brother and the wheel well. Jackrabbits play chase with our van, and I am out of breath. This morning, an invisible rattle shook, but we carried on through oceans of sagebrush and sand. Back home, cicada shells cling to bark. For weeks after our return, I will pluck the umber husks and string them like trophies to tie around my neck. On the window, I trace Elizabeth in the fog of my breath. By the time I reach the H, the E has disappeared. And then there's a poem from the first book that's about hide and seek that is actually the one that is in Best American, which was like such a thrill. Remember getting the email about that and just bursting into tears. So this is called Thanatosis. For those who cannot camouflage themselves, the alternative to fight or flight is tonic immobility. The victim's one trick to keel over. The cooling skin expels foul smells, teeth clench, eyes glaze. The heart sustains a sluggish thump. What's outside can't revive the creature. It feels nothing, though alive, paralyzed while the predator remains. Waiting in the closet behind my mother's dresses, scent of hyacinth, I transmute, mouth pressed in the wool of her one good suit, into a speechless, frozen thing. The others call me from far away, but I am fixed right here, as if these shadows have cast doubt across my way of seeing. I don't want out. And like the prey who plays rigor mortis, biding her time when the enemy is near, while I'm inside this darkness, I can see no difference between death and immobility, what it is to hide and to disappear. So I mentioned that movie, Promising Young Woman, which is just so, I don't know, relevant to so many things. And I have a lot of poems. I don't know if anyone's seen this, but it has to do with the culture of men feeling that they can do what they want with women who are intoxicated. I have a few poems about that. So this is called Dictation. After days of heavy drinking, blackout is swift and total. Mexico, the moon so huge and blank, a hole of perfect darkness punched out. You wake up aching. Sand plasters your left ear. How like a doll you were, how yielding. I could have done anything I wanted. With a ragged fingernail, you scrape the sand that cakes your ear. Your thirst dictates silence. Anything I wanted, but I decided not to. Decisive, incisive, he decided. And are you not the one who wanted him to stiffen up the drinks? Are you not the one who fell? But he decided. You practice arguments on your own body. A different voice repeating, unclamp your tongue. Let's see, I have a few more. Yeah, right, Marion. So this is called Monster. And again, you know, another poem about identity. I think so many of us sometimes wonder, you know, if we are monsters, or what, you know, wonder about our own I guess, impulses and destructive tendencies. Maybe we don't all, but I do. So this is called Monster. Just now, a sudden ruckus thrusts me from dreaming into darkness, like the snow of an old TV set, a hangover's persistent whine. Stacks of scrapbooks tower like cairns. The rattle at my window beckons like a dare, an opossum, glass between us, cellophane, then mirror. I cry out. I close the curtain, pull it back. In the carport floodlight, teeth like dripping needles. Remnants of my last few meals litter the concrete. I bang the glass with my palms, then flatten myself into bed. If I can't see her, I tell myself, she isn't there. And I think might be getting to the end of my time. So I'm gonna end with the last poem in Girls Like Us, which I think I partly chose it. A lot of the poems might feel sort of dark, and I feel like this is maybe one of the more hopeful poems in the collection, and hopefully, yeah, a new direction. Maybe all of future ones will lighten up a little. So this is called Monarch, and it again is about identity, but maybe I think it's about realizing that there are more options than maybe you first thought, or it's not a foregone conclusion, who we become, who we have to. So this is called Monarch. A monarch butterfly fallen from the air lay in a field. I took her home, pinned her to the wall above my desk. For 5 years, she was part of the scenery, like the teacup my son painted, or like the Post-it note you left once, slipping out before I woke. I love you, scrawled in Sharpie. I took for granted her orange rind, stained glass wings, slanted bolts of black, the texture of velvet paintings, white spots along the edge like eyelets. I moved in with you gradually, a few boxes each weekend for months. I moved the Monarch toward the end in a frenzy of packing and lifting. I was careless with her, tossed her without thinking into a liquor box filled with books, the spine's uneven hazards. That she was mine to protect had not occurred to me before. I opened the box to find the right wing torn. So all that was left was her body, the other wing, and orange flecks like confetti that I shook out over my empty desk, brushed into my palm, and let fall into the trash. I was certain she was beyond repair, but now that she's gone, I see her everywhere. All right, thank you so much. What a pleasure to share poems with all of you. Thank you.
Want an award-winning poet to write a personalized poem for your special occasion? Need a manuscript consultation? Are you looking for a literary translator from the Russian? If you go to the website of Katherine E. Young, you'll get the delightful news that the very woman who served as the inaugural poet laureate of Arlington, Virginia, offers all these services. She also, according to connoisseurs of the form, writes poetry that, quote, wraps with equal grace around bears and Bluebeard, around calculus and salt. Books that are, quote, an emotional rescue operation, a survival guide, and a call to arms. Katherine has published 2 extraordinary collections, Day of the Border Guards and, new this spring and launching tonight, Woman Drinking Absinthe. Her work has appeared in Prairie Schooner, the Iowa Review, Subtropics, and many other places. She is the award-winning translator of books by Anna Sarubinets, Akram Ailisi, and Ina Kabish, and she has translated numerous other Russophone poets from Lermontov to Pasternak. She edited Written in Arlington, which is an anthology showcasing 87 poets from her hometown, ranging from nationally known writers to high school students to tourists passing through. She joins us tonight from Arlington, Virginia. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you so much, Marion. Thank you to Zach and the Writers Center. Special thank you to publishers Rose Solari and James J. Patterson and everybody at Squire Publishing. The last book launch that I did for the first book was at AWP, which is a giant writers convention for those of you who don't know. And it was in front of the table and there were 3 other writers and there were maybe 4 people there. So this is pretty amazing tonight and I'm really delighted to be here. I also want to say a special thanks to Liz Hazen for your beautiful and brave poems. And thank you everybody for coming tonight. I'm so pleased to be launching this book. For any of you who know the last book, Day of the Border Guards, you know that I tend to burrow into some dark places, and that particular book burrowed into Russian history and literature. So the ground was pretty dark and deep to begin with. This book, Woman Drinking Absinthe, is also interested in the sort of terrible, unforgivable, and utterly human things that people do to one another, things that people have been depicting in art since at least the Greeks. So while I was exploring all those terrible, awful, unforgivable, and really human things, I could call on references and examples from everywhere from Bible verses to the opera Madame Butterfly and beyond. And I'm going to start tonight with a fairy tale. And yes, it has a bear in it. It's in 6 short parts and it's called The Bear. 1. The bear marauds inside my garden, plants his tracks among the roses. His scent lingers in the hollies, the yews. I gather broken branches in my arms, pocking hands and face with prickling leaves. Inside the house, my cats sniff anxiously, note the bitter tang of bear on my skin. They press their noses to the window, seeking solace in the glass, clear-eyed frame that holds us back, bladed pain that keeps us safe. 2. The bear says, I'm not dangerous. Let me make a den for you. I'll decorate the walls with shells, spread soft moss across your bed. Songs of falling water will soothe the air. Sometimes, perhaps, I'll kiss your full, pleading lips, though they're not the type to which I'm accustomed. 3. I tell the bear, my prince will come claim me. Clear, uninflected. The bear just laughs. Does his skin smell of musk, his flesh taste of honey? Does his fur warm you in winter? Does he know to smooth your cheek with all his claws drawn in? 4. When he holds me in his arms, I hear roaring in my ear. 5. The bear says, look closely, there's a ring set in my nose. And though I've stroked his snout 1,000 times, I've never before now felt iron beneath my fingers. Says the bear, once I begged for my living, recited rhymes, my paw outstretched. I screwed the ring in myself, thought I'd live better with a chain, with 4 walls to steady me. 6. The bear shambles through crowds, snout turning side to side, his eyes always seeking. I don't know what he's seeking. He prefers I fall 2 steps back. That way no one shouts, look, a woman's chained to that bear. Although the chain's invisible. Although at night, when he leads me out, no one sees he's a bear. Next poem is a poem in conversation with the great Russian poet Marina Tsvetaeva, who was famous not just for her poetry, but also for her willingness to pretty much burn everything to the ground for love. Today, I'm writing love songs. Today, I'm writing love songs, Marina, as if you yourself had written none, as if no other woman ever felt or smelled or tasted love's ripe flesh, never stripped love's husk to find succor within, until I, arriving with my hand outstretched, plucked at it from idle curiosity. I promise, Marina, I'll savor this love whole, run my lips along its rim, swallow juices, rind, pips, drink in each drop as if it's the last. Passion slips from its skin, dissolves sweet, hot, sour, bitter, salty on my tongue, recalling foods fashioned by the ancients who stirred seeds of love in their cooking pots. They say I look young again, Marina, my skin's furrows softened by gentle rain. But you and I, we descend from monsoon. Our sort of love engorges the river, corduroys the fields, drowns the seedlings asleep in cradling earth. Heat, water, ooze, fruit rotting in mud. No haven safe from us. Many of the poems in this book explore themes of, this is a new thing for me, mathematics and the physical sciences, and I'm really excited about working with them. So this one's called Calculus. And they're picking at sushi and talking like people who don't know each other well, but mean to, and aren't so sure of the rules anymore. Because the old rules covered things like a girl not talking dirty and backseat kissing and all the places she shouldn't let him put his hands. But this new talk needs new rules. Now he's quoting his therapist, and she's saying he should leave his wife now. She's saying staying's worse. And both of them are draining glasses, mounding napkins, flicking chopsticks, so as not to accidentally glimpse the slits that can ghost across wrists. Because here, in this talk, the husbands are shouting, they're slapping not so secret lovers, while at home the wives are screaming, and the children have been stayed together for, and their savage, selfish eyes let no one forget it, while their fathers are screaming as their mothers take lovers whom they're kissing in cars, hands bruising in motion as breath stutters, sobs, approaches infinity. Leaving home, my husband's house. I lose myself, baffled by streets bearing names I no longer know, their curves and contours couched in shadow, each Eden, El Dorado, Elysium, a sign signaling simply exit. Slipping beneath the city's skin, I discover bluegrass, blues, jazz bars, burr of scotch, whiskey with soda. I meet a man, many men. Feel fingers cleanse my face, smell the way flesh melts into midnight in temporary rooms. Recently, I dreamed of home, my husband's back partitioning the bed, unbreached, unbreachable. Here, when it rains, the skylight weeps, the sink gnaws its own enamel. Near the window, an amaryllis arrays itself anxiously. So much need, my husband once said in disbelief. So much needless grief. And now I think I will read the title poem, Woman Drinking Absinthe. If you want to, you can imagine you're in Paris in the 1890s. The epigraph to this poem is from W.B. Yeats. A living man is blind and drinks his drop. Woman drinking absinthe. Tonight, you're speaking of your wife, the bride you brought across the sea. She tends your sons, pickles fish and ginger on weekends, teaches you the custom of her father, who kept a woman in the village. The waitress knows us as a pair. We share a glass, finish one another's sentences. But what's my role in this miserable tableau? Girlfriend, whore, pursing my lips in the brass cladding of the bar. I've pitched into your blind man's ditch. Toulouse-Lautrec might have cartooned the blousy hair, the cloudy gaze of the woman at this table, coaxing one last drop from La Fée Verte, one last delusion from the muse. You shrug, obligingly peel back flaps, cloth, skin, connective tissue, rib. So framed, your heart glistens like the frog's, ghastly hallucination. I gaze at its pulsing nacreous sac, so like my own. Tell myself this must be love. Already I've succumbed to viridescent dreams, numbed myself to fingers fumbling at bra straps, clasps, the cup and suction of your mouth, the wheels it leaves, louche of bitter wormwood, of aniseed. Soul food. That first time when you hit me, I marveled at the crack your hand made as it struck flat against my face. I should have known right then we were headed straight for this soul food joint where I'm picking at turnip greens, sweet potato pie, as you plead with me to take my inconvenient heart and just go away. You say it's all my fault. I ask too much, love too deep. Don't make me do it again, you say. I know you mean it. Like you mean this next thing. When we've split the last of the cornbread, made our exit past the catfish gazing lugubrious in his tank, when we're standing in the parking lot, your arms around me, your hand, same hand, traces the bone of my cheek, softly, longingly, as if I'd never been there, as if you'd never leave. After great pain of formal feeling comes, as Dickinson says, this book doesn't just dwell in madness and grief. It also explores atonement and healing. And this next poem is a found poem. It's the only found poem in the book. And it's a recipe that first appeared in the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society, which was published in London about 1690. So this is a recipe to cure mad dogs or men or beasts bitten by mad dogs. Agrimony roots, primrose roots, dragon roots, single peony roots, the leaves of box of each handful, the star of the earth, 2 handfuls, the black of crab's claws prepared, Venice treacle of each 1 ounce. All these to be beaten and bruised together and boiled in a gallon of milk till the half be boiled away, then put into a bottle, unstrained, and given 3 or 4 spoonfuls at a time to the dog or beast or man, 3 mornings together before new and full moon. And the last poem that I'm going to read tonight is about one of my favorite things. It's a little bit lighter. It's about figs. The fig flowers in a really cool and unusual way. It flowers on the inside of the fruit. And there's a particular insect, the fig wasp, that goes inside the figs to carry the pollen from flower to flower. This is kind of a Wikipedia poem. For example, the banyan tree under which the Buddha meditated is a fig tree. The poem is in 5 short parts, and it begins with a saying from the Bengali. The word for fig in Bengali is dumar. And here's the saying: "You've become invisible like the dumor or fig flower. Fig. 1. I've become the invisible flower, inflorescence of fig in bloom embroidering my inner walls. Fleshy peduncles descend from my rib cage. Wasps colonize my pelvis, seeking the osteol's warm-mouthed murmur, sex till death. The male fig wasp develops, mates, and dies inside the fruit of his birth. How many men will die in me? 2. How many men will eat my fruit, meditate for years beneath my banyan bones? A parable of the fig tree. When the branch is tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. Rejoice in me, each under your own vine and fig tree, fruit of paradise ripening beneath the leaves that multiply, hiding our sins. 3. When I grew into my beauty, I became a canophoros and wore a necklace of dried figs. A woman learns to initiate herself, leads processions to the altar atop the Acropolis, bears the kanaun readied for sacrifice. Old men tell her, dwell within the temple of our beliefs, not the wilderness that lies beyond. 4. What if wilderness lies within? I sacrificed to Dionysus, infected body and mind by him who's also god of figs. I slew the mountain lion, my son. You, cursing the fig that yields no fruit, Jesus said, let no fruit grow on thee henceforward forever. His fig was just a metaphor. Every mother mourns with me. 5. I've become the dumor flower, favorite of monkeys, bats, refuge of the wingless male. When the fig wasp dies, the fruit absorbs his body. His winged mate carries pollen, fig to fig. Women's work. Each one ripe contains 1,500 seeds. Whoso keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out tonight. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Rose and Jimmy. Thank you, the Writers Center. Thank you, Marion. It's been terrific to put this book out in the world, and thank you for helping me launch it.
Well, I'm going to ask some questions of the poets. And by the way, congratulations to both of you on those beautiful, beautiful readings. They were line by line, really exhilarating. So I was going to ask, can you each give the audience kind of the shape of your book and what's the way you put it together, or what's the art, what else is in it besides what we heard tonight? And do you want to start, Liz?
Sure. I mean, yeah, putting together a book is you sort of see connections that maybe you didn't even realize were there before. Girls Like Us is in 2 parts. And it's not really a narrative book, but I feel like it kind of shows the progression of a speaker kind of figuring out who she is, or at least raising questions of identity. And you know, it's sort of loosely organized. I guess I feel like by the end it's a little bit more positive, and there's more sort of love poems at the end. The speakers kind of come out of more conflict and confusion. So there's a little bit of a narrative arc. And I guess that's what I was thinking, sort of the impression of younger poems in the beginning and then more mature by the end. Oops, oh, you're muted.
Sorry, my puppy is really misbehaving, if anyone has noticed. So I'm having to mute it so he doesn't bark on camera. But Katherine, will you tell us about the shape of your book?
Sure. I think it's the book itself kind of works with some fairly dysfunctional relationships. And I didn't, there are all kinds of ways to deal with that material. And you could do like a Kardashians, way, or a Real Housewives way of looking at dysfunction, right? I didn't really want to do that. And in fact, way back, the original title of the book was Fractals, because I was interested in sort of refracting and looking at, different perspectives on dysfunction. And so there's a lot of dress up in this book. There are a lot of persona poems. There are some poems from the opera Madame Butterfly in the voice of one of the minor characters there. The whole point was just to try to look at things and use the tools that, people have been writing about this stuff since Homer, at least, and to try to use some of those tools to make tableaus and kind of look at dysfunction in creative ways, maybe.
Thank you.
I will say it is more, the book gets, I've read some of the darker poems, but there is a sort of arc of dysfunction and depth, and then coming out on the other side. So it's not all gloom and doom.
Thank you. We have a question. Can you tell us the brief summary of your process from drafting to final poem? Do you want to start, Liz?
Yeah, God, the process. I mean, some of these poems sort of sit for years, and then I come back to them, and some of them happen really, really quickly. I guess, I do a lot of like free writing, and we'll go back to maybe an image or a phrase that stands out to me. Sometimes there'll be an image from a dream that sparks something. Usually have multiple kind of works in progress all at the same time, and then when I decide to really focus on something, then it becomes like hyper focus, and I pay a lot of attention to formal elements. Most of the poems will at least go into iambic pentameter, and it might not stay that way, but I do a lot of like obsessive tinkering. And I think that process helps me sort of, it takes me out of the emotional part of creating the poem, and it gets me some distance from it and helps me figure out what is actually really important to say, I think. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
There's another question in the chat that you've almost answered it, but when do you use form in writing a poem? So I guess in that phase that you spoke about, where you kind of move from being focused on the subject to focus on the words on the page, is that where?
Yeah, and often if I'm stuck, I will try something formal. A lot of the poems end up being in slant rhyme, just because, I don't know, I love slant rhyme. It's sort of, it's not too strict, but it gives me enough boundaries that I have something to push up against. Yeah, there are fewer completely free verse poems in either collection. I think I'm still kind of scared of free verse. The form, having some kind of lens or form or something that gives me distance from the emotional reality of the poems, because as you could tell, they're all, pretty personal, and I need to create some way of stepping away from that. So form's one way, yeah.
Thanks. Katherine, you want to talk about drafting and form?
Sure. Usually for me, poems start very, very small with a word or a phrase, some sound in my head. So I start with sound and I draft on paper. Often the draft on paper is not anything like what comes out. And unlike Liz, I work a lot in form. I'm interested. They don't always start at iambic pentameter, and I tend to end up doing more tetrameter, so four beats per line. I work aloud. I'm really interested in the sounds that are being made, and I also come out of I really kind of got my formal training in poetry in Russian, not in English. So that that background and working with another language helped me hear English very differently. And it also influences, I mean, it's rare that you'll find, there are some in this book, but it's rare that you're going to find poems that are completely lacking in a stanza structure. For example, I like Liz, I find the rules helpful.
Can you expand on your formal training being in Russian? Were you?
Yeah, I lived in Russia for a while. I've been there back and forth for many decades, but I lived there for a while in the 90s, and I was doing something else. I was being a Soviet studies expert. And I took about 2 years to read pretty much the canon of Russian poetry with a person who didn't speak any English, a teacher. And so we worked entirely in Russian, which was just a godsend, because when I would come out of that intense work with language and poetry, then I heard English quite differently. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. I'm also incredibly grateful for the training in poetry, because it's a different school of, poetry, a different way of looking at the world. And recently I've been translating Pasternak, and that work is every single line that I translate teaches me something important about how I want to write. It's so brilliant.
Okay, thank you. Liz, there's a question, what is it like to read the published collections? How is it different from reading, say, the galley or even the Word document? What is it like to see your poems in this final form?
I mean, it's great to have them in book form. I don't know that it changes the poems themselves, but definitely, having it, to me, it sort of helped me feel legitimized somehow, which maybe it shouldn't be that way, but it's sort of like all of this work and energy that I put into it. Now there's these objects, these beautiful physical things now that I can, share with people. Yeah, so I don't know if that's really answering the question.
A poem is an object in itself, and it's in some way they come into their life when they're published on the page. To me, it's never the same. You see a poem on a screen or on a sheet of paper. It's almost like it's not born yet, until it gets typeset and printed.
And then having them all together also, I think, changed them for me. I mean, and even like looking through both of them today and picking out poems, it's, starting to understand things that I hadn't before because of the order that they're in, or seeing the progression of the poems and thinking about, well, what is the connection between them? What is it why should these be in a book together? And so, trying to figure that out, it's like a puzzle. And then when you see it all played out, and it's like, yes, this is exactly how it should be. I don't know, it's very exciting and feels, I don't know, really lucky to me. I feel really, really lucky. So,
Katherine, you?
So I've been reading some of these poems, as some of the folks who are here tonight know, for a while, and I've been working with the poems for a while. And yet, seeing them in a book, seeing them finished, is almost like closing the chapter. The book is itself, it's going out in the world, it's going to do whatever it's going to do. And it feels like now I can let those things go. I can go on to other poems and other projects. And I find that actually incredibly freeing, because there's this anxiety of, when you're working on a poem, it's very private, it's very, it's just in a quiet space. But when you let it out, you're not in control anymore. The other thing that happens when I see them in print is I think, oh, I wish I hadn't used that word, or I wish I had done this differently. And all you can do is hope that you do it better next time, I guess.
Thanks. I think I'm going to ask one last double-barreled question of each of you, and then it'll be time for us to part. But so we have a question. What poets are you reading? Well, there's actually, it could be a triple question. What poets do you consider your influences? What poets are you reading and loving right now? And what book is half finished on your nightside table? You want to take that one, Liz?
Oh, I'm always the questions about, yeah, influences. So poetry that I'm grabbing it. This is, you recommended this, Homie, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I've got about that I'm about to start reading. And then Melanie Fig, she actually lives in the area. I just got her book. We connected online and both write a lot about girlhood and women. So I'm reading that. And then actually I was rereading Catherine's book since, yeah, so, and then books on my bedside table, there are so many of them. Like I don't even know where to start, but there's Marion is a book critic and I get these curated you know, book recommendations. So there was a collection of Korean short stories and the title is Bluebeard's First Wife. So that's what I'm in the middle of right now. And I read a lot of fiction. I would say actually I'm a little embarrassed that I might read more fiction than poetry, and that ends up being a huge influence. Like whatever I happen to be reading at the time, whatever images stand out. Been leaning toward reading more female writers lately.
Well,
I don't know. And then, you know, Anne Sexton is
reading, nothing to be embarrassed of. So great that you would have that kind of intergenre, you know, inspiration. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, I will stop there. I mean, I always wish that I read more, and I think when I'm not teaching, I'll be able to get through a lot more books. I'll reduce the size of that pile.
Wait, I think I talked over you and no one got to hear that you said Anne Sexton. Did you say?
Oh, yeah, I mean, Anne Sexton is, and Rose actually, I'm sure is the person who introduced me to Anne Sexton all those years ago. And then, you know, he's not a woman, but Walt Whitman is just one of those. And I don't think I sound anything like him, but he's just always one to you know, if you need a little hope or something, he's always where I go. So I'll stop now.
I was going to say, I don't know if there's a poet alive that wouldn't have to say that Walt Whitman is some kind of influence on them. It seems like, you know, so foundational.
Right.
Right. And think, what about you, Kate?
So I am that poet for whom Walt Whitman is not foundational, and that's simply because I had my training in Russia. I'm probably the only American-born poet who would say that Alexander Pushkin is a bigger influence on me than Walt Whitman. I like Whitman, but it's not foundational in the way that he is for so many other American poets. For me, the foundational American poet is probably Elizabeth Bishop, and that's who I turn to over and over again. I like W.S. Merwin. I've read a great deal of Merwin and I've learned so much from Merwin. In terms of contemporary poets, I really like Fatima Asghar, and I'm always interested in what Dennis Smith has to say. I'm looking for people who are working in sort of the cross-pollinating, you know, page and stage community, because I think that's an awful lot of energy, and I want some of that.
Yeah. And what are the half-finished books on your night table?
So I am reading Music for the Dead and Resurrected by Valgina Mort. I am reading the first novel by a woman translated from Thai called Bright. And the author is, I hope I'm not screwing this up, Duanwad Phimwana. I will hold this up if you can see it. And I am reading the incredible 19th century novel of Karolina Pavlova, who was a Russian well-to-do woman, poet, woman of letters, and she was completely squashed by the male patriarchy in Russia in the 19th century and ended up dying in great poverty in Germany. But she wrote this one amazing novel, which in some ways mirrors Jane Austen, about being a young girl caught up in society and being completely at the mercy of other people and watching it happen. It's a very self-aware novel and just devastating.
Say the name of it again?
It's by Karolina Pavlova, and I'm sorry that I'm blanking on the name. If I find it, I will put it in the chat.
Okay, well, actually, I think I might be turning it over to Zach to send us home. Unless there's a question I missed. I think I asked him.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all three of you. But before we go officially, we do have a big announcement from Allen Squire Publishing. So last year, Allen Squire ran its first open submission period. And of the many brilliant manuscripts they received, the team selected 2 for publication in 2022. They'll be announcing the fiction selection at the end of the month, but tonight, this evening, we get to make the big announcement for the next poetry title that the press will be publishing, and that is Saida Agostini's Let the Dead In, coming on March 26th, 2022. Saida Agostini is a queer Afro-Guyanese poet whose work explores the ways Black folks harness mythology to enter the fantastic. Her work has been featured in Plume, Hobart Pulp, Auburn Avenue, and many other places. Her chapbook Stunt was published last year by Neon Hemlock. It reimagines the life of Nellie Jackson, a Black madame and FBI spy from Natchez, Mississippi. So Saida, congratulations to you. Welcome to the press. I believe I did see you on the event earlier, so I'm so glad that you're here. Everyone, please give a really warm welcome to Saida. This is a wonderful moment for the press and for me this evening getting to announce it. So, and then finally, I'm just going to say a few quick thanks before the evening is over. Thank you, Marion. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Catherine. It was a fantastic event, and it's all because of you three. But there are a few other people involved as well. Henry Crawford has been in charge of all the technology this evening. He made sure that everything is going off without a hitch. Thanks to Rose Solari, James Patterson, Hannah Grieco, and everyone at Allen Squire Publishing. Thanks to all my pals here at the Writers Center who helped make all these events possible. Thanks to everyone. We're done for the evening. It's been really great, and I thank all of you so much in the audience for joining us. Have a good evening.